If you're looking for true triumph and tragedy, look no further than 1941 to 1945. It's September 1st of 1939. World War II has begun. Axis power, which relied on Germany, Italy, and Japan, were winning the war. But 5 years after the war began, in December 7th of 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they were able to manage to destroy and damage nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died and 1,000 were wounded. The day after the surprise attack, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan, and Franklin Roosevelt addressed a joint session of the United States Congress on December 8, and he said,
"Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan."
Japan's plan was to cripple the United States Army, but this plan didn't work. The reason for Japan to launch this surprise attack on a naval base that belonged to the United States was because Japan had imperial ambitions to expand to China to solve some demographical and economical problems and to take over the Chinese import market, which then in 1937, Japan decided to declare war on China. America was strongly against this aggression and responded with trade embargoes and economic sanctions. Specifically, the oil embargo that America organized with the British and the Dutch was a thorn in the side of Japan, which imported 90% of its oil. Without the oil from America, British and the Dutch, Japan's military could not function, and all the war efforts would come to an end. Negotiations had been going on for months between Washington and Tokyo without any resolution, so Japan decided to attack first. So now America has officially joined the World War on December 1941. But they were already involved but not fighting in the war until after Pearl Harbor. By providing war materials and financial support to Britain, the Soviet Union, and the Republic of China, America now was in World War II. World War II has claimed the lives of approximately 418,500, both being civilian and military Americans. But one of the most important parts of the events of World War II had to be the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hiroshima came first before Nagasaki. The reason of the United States doing this is because Japan would not surrender and America did not want to drag out the battle. So on August 6, 1945, during World War II, an American B-29 Super Fortress bomber named Enola Gay dropped the first deployed atomic bomb, named the Fat Boy, over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The explosion of the atomic bomb wiped out 90% of the city and immediately killed 80,000 people. And later on, tens of thousands more would later die of radiation exposure. 3 days after the first bomb in Hiroshima, a second B-29 dropped another atomic bomb on Nagasaki, this time killing 40,000 people. Japan's Emperor Hirohito announced his country's unconditional surrender in World War II in a radio address on August 15, citing that the devastating power of a new and most cruel bomb. Many people say that bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the blood-filled World War II that will go down in the history books as the deadliest war ever. But estimates vary between 50 million and 80 million, wiping out around 3% of the world's population at the time. And I think that by ending the war, they had achieved a great triumph by both winning the war and stopping it, and ending the casualties. And one of the tragedies from the war will stay with us for the longest time. That tragedy will have to be the effects that came from the atomic bombs that have been dropped on both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The atomic bomb showed catastrophic effects on both the places that were dropped and the people that were affected by that drop. Hiroshima was a city of considerable military importance and was once a beautiful city with amazing buildings, just like Nagasaki was now a piece of land with stacks of rocks filled with radiation that has caused many problems with the people from both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not only did people die from the force of the explosion, but some have developed cancer, mostly kids than adults. Both cities saw an increased number of leukemia cases after the bombing. Leukemia is a cancerous illness of white blood cells which job is to fight off infections, which some of its side effects are anemia, easy bruising or bleeding, susceptibility to infections, swollen lymph node, and general loss of well-being, such as a loss of appetite, weight, and a feeling of weakness or fatigue all the time. And us Americans need to live with that tragedy in which we killed and wounded approximately 150,000 in Hiroshima and 75,000 in Nagasaki, and the rest that had to suffer through the diseases that they got from radiation from both of the atomic bombs. Not only did people die from the explosion, cancer, and radiation poisoning, some people were born with either small to extremely large or somewhat in between birth defects. The incidence of major birth defects, which were 594 cases or 0.91% among the 65,431 registered pregnancies. Some of the most common defects seen at birth were anencephaly, cleft palate, cleft lip, with or without cleft palate, club foot, additional toe or finger, and the fusion of two or more fingers or toes. These abnormalities accounted for 445 of the 594, or 75% of the malformed infants. The action of bombing Hiroshima made the United States one of the most feared and powerful countries in the world. The action of the bombing also brought improvements to technology, and you can either see these improvements as a good thing or a bad thing. For one thing, since the Fat Boy and Little Man, nuclear bombs have increased in power and destruction. Bombs powerful enough to leave entire states completely uninhabitable, with many casualties waiting to happen. And this might also be tragedy that many countries have these powerful weapons. Some other improvements can be the introduction of nuclear power plants that can provide energy without wasting important resources, since they don't burn fuel. They do not produce greenhouse gas emissions, but these power plants have also caused the tragedies such as Chernobyl disaster in 1986 that made a city uninhabitable. And it doesn't matter how long ago the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was, it is still affecting us until this day, and that is an important part of history that should never be forgotten.